would love to talk to each one of you and hear all your stories. I really would, but we do have a meeting that we have to get going on. So thank you for all taking your seats. And I'd like to get started for roll call. If everyone wants to introduce yourself, we'll start down with Chuck and kind of go around the table.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. I'm Chuck Prather from the Birchwood in downtown St. Petersburg.
Good morning, Doreen Moore, Travel Resort Services, Vacation Rentals throughout the beach.
Good morning, Bruce Rector, Mayor of the City of Clearwater.
Good morning, everybody. Brian Scott, Pinellas County Commission, District 2.
Good morning, everyone. Dan Saraki, Mayor, City of Oldsmar.
Russ Kimball, Sheraton Sankey, Clearwater Beach.
Brian Loack, Visit St. Pete, Clearwater.
Amanda Coffey, Managing Assistant County Attorney.
Good morning. I'm Dave Gaddis, Mayor of Bel Air Beach and delegate to the Big C.
Good morning, Tricia Rodriguez of the Tropics Boat Tours and the Clearwater Ferry.
Good morning, Phil Henderson, Starlight Cruises, South Pasadena, Madeira Beach, and Clearwater Beach.
Okay, wonderful. I think the first thing, and I'm Commissioner Kathleen Peters, I think the first thing we have to do is we have Mike that's going to be
and Madam
virtual.
Chair, Mike Williams here, zooming in from Dallas, Texas.
Okay, and I don't know if Clyde has joined us, but Clyde was going to do the same thing. So I need a motion to allow them to participate in the meeting virtually.
Madam Chair,
so
I make a
moved.
motion to approve.
Okay, and a second? So we got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, welcome to the meeting, Mike.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I hope everybody is doing good. You know, we've been through a rough go, a lot of us, and not only on our personal property, but in our businesses, but we're all very resilient, and I'm confident that we're gonna come back much better and stronger, and we're gonna do it pretty darn quickly. So, so I'm gonna look for approval of the minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We have one speaker, it's Robin Miller. Good to see you, Robin. She's another one, keeping our businesses strong and communicating really, you've been communicating really great.
It's been a long time since I've spoken to TDC. I think it's 10 years. So Robin Miller, President CEO, Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce, 6990 Gulf Boulevard. And I'm just here on two things. I'm so thrilled to see actually that I thought I saw, Kelly's on here for beach. As you know, we're in a phased recovery approach out on the beaches, and immediately there's the rush to go in and demo and pull out the debris. And what's happening now, and they're working very swiftly, is that where they're going in now to pull permitting and start to, redevelop what they have to do. And they have companies coming in to do that work, but they also want to keep some of their displaced employees at work as well. So many of the calls that the chamber is fielding is what to do with sand. And so I'm hoping that today Kelly will guide us a little bit on that, because if the sand is on private property of the facilities, whatever the type of commercial property that is, or even some of the residents. So we want to make sure that we're protecting the sand, and the environment of our biggest and best asset. So that was the first. And the second is I want to thank the CVB and everyone that's been communicating, Jason and Brian and Kylie and Oliver, everyone. Still shining is great, and I'm thrilled that you have that subtle approach to keep a great light on our destination. I want to tell you that we do have smaller properties, some that were built a little bit more resilient, right? Or even bigger, thanks to Clearwater Beach with those properties that are open. So some have called asking how they can softly market their little area to help, whether it's a resident or somebody that just needs a couple days away. And I did mention the Still Shining, so I'm just asking maybe we can get a small media kit of an image or something so that they're transferring your wonderful message in the same way you are, and we have that great connectivity into our smaller beach communities. So that's all I had. Thank you.
That's a great suggestion, and I'm certain that our team will get with you. And you've been communicating so great. I know you'll get that distributed very efficiently. So thank you, Robin. Great suggestions, great comments. So that's all I have on public comment. And so we're going to move on to presentations. And it is great to have Kelly here. Hate taken away from all the busy work, but it's probably a nice change for her because they have just been so busy and hard at work. And thank you. I can't thank you enough. All our staff, I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Good morning. Kelly Hammer-Levy, the Public Works Director for Pinellas County. And I'm here to give you an update on our beaches, where we are, what we're doing, paths forward, and answer any questions you have. And I mentioned to Brian that I'm not quite 100% Kelly. I'm some portion of Kelly right now, so bear with me if I trip up a little bit. Yeah. So I'm going to cover the hurricane impacts from Helene and Milton and where we are currently. I did meet with the Army Corps on Monday. A little bit of an update there. And then, again, the county has been working on our own project, and that is still continuing on, so I'll touch on that as well. And to Robin's point, I will also touch on sand. We put out a release last night, and so hopefully that will help a lot of people. So I'm just going to go through a little bit, starting with the 2018 and what the beach looked like at that point. Right before Helene, we got out there 2 days before and took pictures at similar locations, and then got right out there after, just to kind of present that visual. We did have some recovery come in some of our beaches. If you've gone out, I was out there on Monday and North Reddington Beach. You saw this nice recovery berm coming in. Again, as we're in the summertime, when storms come through, a lot of sand will end up immediately offshore, and then as the tides move, they'll bring that sand back in, and we're seeing that in a lot of areas. So it's a very positive thing, and it'll help with the recovery. So this is Indian Rocks Beach, again, starting with where we were in 2018, and just focusing obviously I tried to keep the same building in the picture, but, checking out where the historic dune was. Most of those dunes, as you know, were impacted previously, and then, some were still there, but this last few events have really had an impact on our dunes. Again, this is another shot of Indian Rocks Beach, right near 50 Gulf Side. They have been a wonderful partner in wanting to establish dunes out front of their condominium complex. So again, looking forward in the future to working with them again and, creating that important asset out front of their property. Again, Reddington Shores. North Reddington Beach. This is Sunshine. Didn't quite have the same view, but did have the same building. And again, they still had a nice dune there right before Helene. Unfortunately, we have lost that at this point. And then Sunset Beach. We are actually out there right now on Paso Grill and Sunset Beach. We have a lot of sand out there. We are screening it, and then we are going to be placing it back on the beach to help shore up some of those areas and create some stability in some areas where we've had some damages. And again, just some shots of our, I know you've all been out there, but we are paying attention to everything and documenting everything that we see. So our estimated losses at this point, we are estimating about 1 million cubic yards, largely from Helene due to the surge. Milton, we're not quite sure. It kind of looks like it more redistributed the sand because we didn't have the surge like we did with Helene. For some perspective, we are doing the math and trying to get quantification of the estimates, but the 2018 nourishment, we put about 1.3 million cubic yards out there. We've lost about 1 million here. Since September of '23, we've lost 1.2 million. So when we'll look at how much we've lost since after the initial 2018 nourishment to kind of present that picture better, but a lot of volume has been lost. And that's our main concern here right now. Previously, we had done, the Army Corps had done a damage assessment from Adalia. We received a positive report, meaning, when I say positive, it means, yes, you had substantial damages and, and qualify for federal emergency funding. It was in the ballpark of 65 million at that point in time. Unfortunately, because of the easement issue, that was blocked. The Helene assessment from the Corps was in process when Milton hit. So I'm not quite sure how the Corps is going to handle those two storms, if they're going to combine them into one assessment or try to do two separate. I'm not really quite sure how they want to do that because we were not able to complete the survey before Milton hit. And as I mentioned, Army Corps was on site on Monday. There is a new commander in the Jacksonville office, Brandon Bowman. This was his first time down here to kind of see what we're dealing with. And so I'm very hopeful that he's going to help us navigate what comes next. What are we doing now? Obviously, Paso Grill is still in the nourishment phase. And we are, again, taking all of the sand off of St. Pete Beach and we're reincorporating that back into the project limits. That's also helping the city get that sand out of their way of doing important work. On Sunset Beach, we're doing the same thing with Treasure Island. We removed as much sand as we could from the West Gulf Boulevard right away, and then we'll be collecting more. And again, placing that in the template of Sunset Beach. It was one of the worst hit as far as Pinellas County goes. Our other work zones are to be determined, but we are going to be collecting all the sand out of Johns Pass Park. There's a substantial amount of beach-compatible sand there, and some other areas that we will be defining a work zone to place that in. I'd like to work in an area, similar like what we're seeing in North Reddington Beach, because you've got kind of a depressional area, you've got the recovery berm, and then it goes out to the water, and I'd like to level out that recovery berm area. We also have opened up a county sand drop-off location in Sankey Park. It kicks off today at 1 p.m. and will run to 7 p.m. tonight, and then 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. So anyone, property owner, condo, hotel, city, whomever cannot repurpose the sand in front of their beach, can bring it to us. We will be taking clean sand, we'll be separating the piles, we'll have clean sand and we will screen that clean sand and place it back into the beach environment. Incompatible sand we will dispose of through approved methods. There's still a process to do that, and again, we have been seeing a lot of people just pushing the sand back out into the beach, and again, we are encouraging that. We just need to remove debris. I've seen some piles out there with kitchen cabinets in it and other stuff, so be very helpful if people could do that. Just push the pile and just make sure that debris is out. We can't, we're gonna have a problem if we have a lot of that stuff out there. Yesterday in St. Pete Beach, as they were going through some of their cleanup, I think it was a 50-gallon fuel tank was buried in some of these areas, and it got punctured and spilled into the beach environment. So, fire rescue is down there helping to coordinate that, as well as DEP. So these are the things we don't want to happen. So again, you all are aware that the county is continuing forward with our project. That has not stopped. Our permits have been submitted. We're waiting for authorization to proceed. And at that point in time, it'll go before the board to be bid out and constructed. we're also, again, continuing to work with the federal government and see, in parallel. So one of these two things will move forward, but we're just going to keep going until we figure out which one it is. And I know that it's hard to kind of stay positive with some of this stuff. I know the pictures are not what we want to see, but when I was out on the beach, somebody's ornament was laying right there. And I took that as an incredibly positive moment and snapped a picture of it because that's where our heart is. And we are down, we are not out, and we will be back.
Thank you, Kelly. I know we're all going to have a lot of questions, and Barry's here to make some comments about beach renourishment too. So I want you to hang on to those questions. And Barry, you want to come on up, and then we can get both of them to answer questions. I know there's going to be a lot of questions, so.
Good morning, everyone. Kelly's pictures, do, kind of tell you what we're dealing with. But, as you can see, Paso Grill, we still have a nourishment project. We're going to complete it. It's going to be back, and it's going to be ready for the season. Our hotels, for the most part, and most of our main areas are going to be back, and they're open. They're either open now, or they're going to be very shortly. So do we have areas where we're going to have to? Of course, but there's a very positive message here. And I think that we have work to do. I will tell you, probably the most encouraging thing, because we've talked about it for years now, is a conversation that your chair had with, or initiated through the White House, and the person we talked to, which is their lead person on FEMA. Not only did they know our history and our story about what we're dealing with FEMA, but they understood our beaches. And she specifically said, after we get done with this, we're going to bring Connor in, okay? Which means she knew who the Undersecretary of the Army for the Corps of Engineers is, who we've been trying to get moving on these issues. And she said, we're going to resolve this. Now, we've heard that before, and I've had optimism shot out from under me before. But we've got people's attention, and so that contact and that call leads us to hope that we'll be able to resolve these issues with the Corps of Engineers. So there is a positive message. We have a lot of work to do. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's a little bit of kind of at a higher level where we see some of a positive thing coming out of all of this. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't really have any specific comments. I really come down to be able to answer any questions.
So I love the conversation we had, because y'all heard the president called me on Wednesday, and he said, what do you need? And the first thing I said is, we need our beaches renourished. Before I said anything about the storms, I said, we can't protect our people, we can't protect our property, and we can't protect our infrastructure. He said, I understand that. I had a problem in Delaware, blah, blah, blah. He said, I know the issue, I don't have an answer, but when we called the chief of staff and they had the FEMA person call us back, her words were a little different, which made me more optimistic, is her words were, I believe we have a workaround as a result of Milton. And that sounded optimistic to me. I believe we have a workaround because of Milton. And so that's the first time I've ever felt optimistic when it comes to the beach renourishment issue. So once we kind of get past all the initial stuff with the storm, we're going to follow back up with her and see what that workaround is going to be. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. I hope we're not disappointed. So I'm gonna throw the first question out, water quality. Kelly, have we tested the water on the beaches to see if it's safe? Because I see signs in Treasure Island saying the beach is closed. And I just don't know if they haven't gotten the debris out of the beaches or if the water quality is not there yet.
As you guys all know, the health department has various locations that they test periodically. I'm not aware that they've been able to get out there. We are going out today So we will be out there and we will get our data posted as soon as possible. Unfortunately, our lab flooded, so we've had to create a makeshift area to do this. So, but I got to give it to my team. They were resilient. They found a way to get it done, and they're out there this morning. So.
Outstanding. Okay, I'm going to start with Phil because he had his hand up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for all your work. Mary, to you and Kelly. I know it's been tough, and it's going to stay tough for a while, but you're doing a phenomenal job. Do you have an estimate of how much sand went out that may come back versus how much is on the street?
Not yet. We are doing our best to quantify all of this. As a matter of fact, we got a request from our budget office to kind of put together these estimates. But basically what we got to do is we basically have to take all of the survey data. We survey the beaches on a quarterly basis anyway. But we also go out and we run profiles at least 2 days before the storm and then immediately thereafter, and we do a full-on survey. So we've got a ton of data that will help us quantify that better, but we just haven't gotten there yet with the analysis.
Right. And something you and I have talked about briefly in the past, on the East Coast, there are pump stations that I thought were pumping sand back where it came from, but as it turns out, it's pumping it under a pass, so it continues its natural migration. I still think that if there's a way we could do it, you know, at Reddington approximately, or at Indian Rocks, that's where the point is, and the sand goes south from there and goes north from there. We've seen the north end of Sand Key build up behind the Sheridan, acres and acres, to the point where it's a county park now, and that's all sand that came from the south. I really feel like if there's a way we could do it, if we could build a permanent system where we could pump when it gets up in there in a mass amount, be able to pump it back down underneath, perhaps create a berm in the process that's not going to go away, and be able to pump sand all the way back down to Reddington and let it just keep flowing around and around. Same with Johns Pass. It flows south to Johns Pass. Now it's going in Johns Pass and creating a problem. It's coming into Clearwater Pass and creating a problem. And I don't know what the ramifications are, but it certainly seems like a little extra investment one time around would give us a permanent solution for the future.
Well, I mean, again, we did have some really good conversations with the Corps on Monday, and Colonel Bowman is very much looking into, I don't say alternative, but innovative options. So he took a lot of notes, and you know, he is going to get back with us. He also offered, once things were settled down and you know, we had time to breathe, that he would come back. You know, we had that forum in Indian Shores, and he wants to come back. And after, he's going to watch it, and every single question that people brought up, every single concern, and try and ensure that he has a solution. So again, I was very optimistic in talking with him. He's only been in his role for 3 months. So he's deep diving in, and he's staying very much in touch.
Even if we get emergency renourishment, it's a continual problem. It's never going to go away. And coming up with something like that as a long-term permanent solution is going to save a tremendous amount of resources, and the beach will continually be there regardless. When I talk about creative solutions, our property in South Pasadena, sustains substantial damages to the dock. 23 years ago, or 24 years ago, we had a houseboat as a ticket office. It's something I inherited when I bought the property, but it was in really bad shape, and we couldn't use it anymore. The city wouldn't let me build something on the dock because of the county saying you can't build over the water. So they said I could actually build a second floor ticket office in the middle of the parking lot, which didn't make any sense at all. So I built a 6-spud homemade jack-up barge ticket office. I put it in place 23 years ago. It consists of 3 pontoons, an aluminum framing and deck, and a very lightweight house. We took it down there, jacked it up, fixed the cables and so forth so it would just be right there and wouldn't be on the winches anymore. 23 years later, we had a storm where my dock completely lifted up, 150 feet of dock, lifted up, twisted, pilings and all. And that houseboat went up the spuds, and came back down to Spuds, right on Scables, and is right where it was before and ready to use. My offices in Clearwater, which are over the water on docks, are condemned. They had 3 feet of water in them, and there's no way I'd want to put anybody back in there. So there's creative solutions out there. Mine, I wasn't even sure was going to work. 23s later, I see that it did, and it'll work again if it happens again. So let's look long-term creative fixes. Thank you.
Mike, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so I see your hand up, and I'm just going to let you go for it because you may ask a lot of the questions that all of us want to ask. So go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Kelly, Barry, thanks for your very thorough updates. Kelly, I'm wondering, is it possible for you to circulate the PowerPoint presentation that you just gave us so that we could all have access to that?
Absolutely. I will make sure I'll send it to Brian and he can have it distributed through his team as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. Secondly, and Barry, perhaps addressed to you, do we have the ability to redirect TDC funds to help in whatever Kelly faces here in the coming days, weeks, and months? Is it possible for us to reallocate additional funds to help her with her efforts?
I think that would depend on what it is that we're doing. There's specific guidelines, obviously, that would have to be approved by the legal counsel in terms
Sure.
of the use of the funds. So long as it is consistent with the state requirements, you certainly could. It may or may not require a plan amendment depending on what your plan says. So there's two levels to that, but certainly that's something that you could consider, and you may not need to. I mean, if we're successful in going after federal funds, then certainly we want to exhaust those remedies first, and then grant funds. I also think there's opportunities for follow-on grants that's going to come out of this. There's going to be a lot of resources that come out of it. So and it's hard to say what that is and what it looks like. But if you start breaking down what happened, look at the housing pieces for our residents. Well, other areas that have experienced that have been very successful in a lot of federal funds for kind of rebuilding. I can't tell you a timeline. I can't tell you, can you get a bill through Congress? All those things follow on. So, but we're gonna kind of, as we go forward, outline some options and ideas. But certainly in terms of the use of the TDC funds, you do have some flexibility there. And we certainly, as we talked about before, regardless of what the Corps does, you still have the ability, if that's a decision at some point, and we can't get out of the Corps of doing things yourself, right? So certainly things around beach nourishment and things like that are authorized uses. So we can have those conversations.
Barry, thank you. I just, I think it's wonderful that we have the attention of the federal government, and I know that sometimes those things can move very slowly. If emergency funding, emergency authorization would help, Kelly, your efforts, hopefully we would be able to step in and enact those amendments that would allow the money to trail through to her.
And I think it's a good point. The other thing, that again we can consider is, once you document everything and you submit that and you go after grants, you might choose to do some things locally and get reimbursed rather than waiting on the grants to actually be approved. So those are all very legitimate things for discussion as we get further along in this assessment.
Great. Thank you. And lastly, Madam Chair, if I could just, and perhaps we'll talk about this later in the agenda, our marketing messaging out to the world that we're open and available for business. We'll need to figure that out. Thank you.
Yes, and I know Brian's team is already working on that, and will likely get in touch with Visit Florida to see if they can't assist us in marketing for the state that the Gulf Coast is open for business. So we'll be reaching out to Dana Young and seeing if we can't get some resources that way.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Okay, Doreen.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for all your support and efforts. Water quality was mentioned, and I think one of the big things, obviously, the sand, we've seen the debris removal on Gulf Boulevard throughout some of the beach communities, and I think that is affecting us because on it, I live on the Intercoastal, and I see the debris is just there. I see the same thing float in and float out, and so all of this that's on the streets that hasn't been picked up. We were very, very fortunate that we didn't have another surge and take all of that out. But whatever efforts the county can do to facilitate getting this debris, because since Milton, in our communities up and down, I'm not seeing as much effort. And I think that's going to be huge. And I know we can't control everything in terms of the sewage and the drainage from other places, but this is critical.
So,
thank you.
And that's one of the reasons I came down to the meeting, because I figured people might have a few questions regarding debris. It is a huge, huge issue. It has been in every single hurricane where you've had this type of damage. And we're not exempt from that. I will also tell you I've learned more in the last 3 weeks about debris than I really cared to, and regulations and processes and things like that, and things that make sense, and things that we can deal with today, and things that are best set for an after-action review about how to do things differently the next time. But the plan is, and the plan has been, prior to anything coming up, is that each community has a debris management plan. Okay, each community has that. We actually train on that. Okay, that process is that they have to be able to be eligible for FEMA reimbursement. You have to have a drop site. Okay, that has a FEMA approved monitor and a contractor that is a FEMA approved contractor. There's a series of 4 that were certified and available for the communities to use. They choose that. They manage that. We manage for unincorporated areas. Okay. Now, it's like after a fight, you get hit in the head and you go, "Whoa, what am I facing?" And I think you're seeing some of that, of getting up and running and being able to respond. Well, you just start to figure out how you're going to do this, and then we face another hurricane coming at us. And so there's delays that if I was a resident and I had that in front of my house, I wouldn't take that, and I understand that, and that's a frustration, and it's real. But they're all working on those plans, and they're executing on those in their particular way. A lot of it had to do with the volume. If I was creating a debris management plan, I would take the beach parking lot. I would say that's my debris management site. I've created my plan. I've got the FEMA-approved contractors, and that's my plan. Nobody envisioned the volume associated with this, storm surge. And so all of a sudden, that beach parking lot doesn't work. Correct. It's full of sand first. And you first have to clear Gulf Boulevard, and our crews were down with FDOT crews and our contractor. Kelly's entire team went to Gulf Boulevard, okay, to help FDOT and their contractor. So it was a monumental effort by everybody just to clear it to where first responders could respond. The neighborhoods, my gosh, look at Sunset Beach. You can't even drive through there. The piles of sand are higher than the house, and now you've got debris right next to it. So, it's a huge issue that they're working to resolve. And we're working with the cities, and we have call downs every single day. They all have a plan. There's a lot of misnomers out there, so you can't believe everything you hear. And when people get frustrated, people start to blame and place blame, whether it's direct, it's positive, or it's misinformation or whatever. But that's the process, and so they're acting on that. They're getting on that. I can tell you, nobody. Okay, there's all things about take it to the landfill. Well, nobody in the state, okay, not in Pasco County, not in Hillsborough County, are they taking it and putting a Class 1 landfill. Nobody does that, and that's not allowed under FEMA rules. They're taking it to a construction demolition landfill. You happen to have more in Pasco County than you do here because of the nature of their community. But that's what's happening up there. So they're taking it to their drop sites, they're processing it through, and their end result is in a C&D landfill. If you go up to our site on Keystone and East Lake Road, you will see 6 piles, okay? And this is part of our the letter that the chair sent to the president, well, sent to the governor, to the president. It will have Helene vegetation, Helene debris, C&D material, and Helene appliances and white goods. And then you'll have Milton vegetation, Milton this, Milton that. That is what's required under FEMA rules for reimbursement. The chair's letter said, let's combine the storms, okay, to where we don't have to do that. Let's make it easier. And so we have a consultant in, because I asked, why do we have all this, okay? And they can point to every hurricane, greedy people hire people that then run up bills that the federal government and then audits and turn put people in jail later, right? So I'm not excusing it, but there's a reason for some of the processes that they have. So we've tried to find things, and through the letter that the chair sent, that the president could waive and combine and make it easier. I would like nothing more. One of the big things is we have 4 places now that you can take to C&D. Remember, the federal FEMA reimbursement process does not cover commercial, and commercial is considered not just commercial business, but multifamily. Huge issue. And there's no way you've separated it if you drive down the road. I mean, it's all at the curb, and you got a multifamily, and you got a resident, and multifamily, and a business, and how do you make sense out of that? But that's the rules, okay? And so we put in a number of things, such as be able to take it to any of the drop sites and then tie it back, because again, you got a FEMA monitor with an electronic way of being able to check addresses and tie it back to our flood inundation maps. We know the structures that flooded, and tie it back through that. That way there's an audit process for them for the federal reimbursement money. So we've proposed a number of things. We're waiting for a response on several of them. We've got about 75%, but it's the things that we can make it easier for people to process. But any of those 4 processing places, or they can haul it directly to any other C&D site. So they have choices on how they choose to manage their waste. We're doing that for unincorporated. The cities are managing that waste for their cities. But they're all up and running. They've got a plan. It is taking time, and that's where we're at. So.
I'm going to go to Clyde, because I know he may not be able to stay long. So Pete, if we could bring up Clyde, or is he just on the phone? Is he just verbal?
Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
I can hear you, Clyde.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I was late. I'm having some technical issues, not unexpected. I just want to give you an update on Treasure Island. They do have dump trucks and tractors out there doing beach cleanup, and it looks like 30 to 40 volunteers or whoever cleaning up the beach. So I do think debris is the reason the beaches are closed, but there's an army out there right now working on that.
Thank you, Clyde. I appreciate it. Did you have any other questions?
I no other questions at this time. They've been answered. Thank you.
Okay. Chuck Prather, did you have questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple questions, one on funding and the other on cleanup. A significant part of our tourism is water activity, and you have intercoastal waterways and Boca Ciega Bay, all kinds of waterways that are potentially clogged with debris, sunken boats, things like that. Who would be responsible for clearing our waterways?
All right, so after Helene, the state assigned a lead for marine debris. So we are coordinating with the state on that. They actually put in a mission. I believe Ashbrit is their contractor. So I'll have some more information on that soon. We were just getting that process kicked off after Helene when we had to prepare for Milton. But I can get some additional information and ensure that that's sent out to you.
Thank you very much. And I see Barry getting around the corner. I'll get, he can answer this one in a minute, but the next one on debris was the Pinellas County was turning away, as you described, because people needed to go to their individual cities, like St. Petersburg's FEMA dump sites. So they were turning us away when we decided to bring storm debris there. When do you think that will open back up for?
Well, again, they're not a certified, the dump, you call it a dump, it's a waste energy facility. It is not a certified FEMA site. It's got to go to one of the pre-designated sites. Every plan has designated, you have to have a laydown site, okay? If you're processing the material, and then it's going to go for final disposition at one of the C&D landfills, whoever your contractor uses. So the easy thing was to say, well, let's just take it and bury it. Well, you've got a Class 1 landfill that is not designed for construction demolition debris. That's the reason you have construction demolition sites. And we have them here in the county. Many people didn't want to pay the fee associated with it, but that's the process to use. And that was in the plans before. So people are trying to change the plans to make it easier for them, but then you can't get reimbursed even.
Makes sense. I would encourage, whether it's the municipalities or the county, my people spent, I want to say, 3 hours searching, trying, because when we were turned away at the dump, they said that very, very politely, by the way. Your staff was very good, keeping everybody calm. But they said, you need to go find, as you just described, the FEMA site in your particular town. Of course, you couldn't get through. Understandably, that's not a judgment, to our particular municipality. But we couldn't find it online. We couldn't find it on the county site. It seems like it would have been just a few minutes to say, if you live in St. Pete, go here. If you live in Treasure Island, go here. It would have helped a lot of people. Yeah. And there just wasn't a very easy way for people to find out. That's just a comment.
It's actually a very valid comment, and we've heard that a lot. And getting the information out from the cities, and this is not to blame the cities. Many of their sites, they became full before they could even get to residential, and so they were trying to figure out another place to put it, and we had municipalities trying to work together. So, like for instance, Largo didn't really get his, we're saying, so several went to Largo and trying to use theirs. So there was a kind of fog of war there to get up and running, and so it was very confusing for people. That's an after-action review. I think there's a lot of things like that we could do differently to make it, easier. Hopefully, we never have to use it, but there's a lot of ways that I think we can improve this.
Thank you very much. And then the follow-up is funding, really was for Madam Chair. So we saw $65 million blocked before, and now people have a new attitude. Do you see any light in this is a crystal ball question. I don't think you can have a real answer, but you can have an opinion. Is there any hope of not only getting this storm funded, but reaching back and getting maybe that $65 million? Do you see something there? And then do you see any hope from Tallahassee with some emergency funding for us?
So you can't claw back money that was blocked. So I don't have faith on that one. But what I do feel more comfortable on is if they do come up with a workaround, that we will get the funding we need. So it's not like we have to get that back. I think we'll get the funding that we need if we, in fact, get the workaround. So, so it is a crystal ball. I don't know. But, you can't get back something that was blocked. And so now it's just a matter of us, and we've been moving right along with all the design and all the permitting process and everything. So if we get that workaround, we're really pretty ready to go. I mean, right, Kelly?
Yes, we would just basically hand over all of our design documents to the Corps. I mean, they would obviously have to do their own, but we've done all of the base work that would accelerate a project.
Yeah, so it's just getting that workaround.
And just as a reminder, Kelly's team, they've been working to do the full permitting and design, and until we got until we had that done and get the permits, even if we wanted to do it on our own, we couldn't. So they've done all that base work. So we're ready when we can. So.
Okay. So I'm going to go to Mayor Rector. I know Doreen has another question, but we're going to let everybody else ask theirs first, and then I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, I spoke with someone in leadership on Capitol Hill and last night, and there will be federal relief, disaster relief bills through Congress sometime after the election. They don't know if they're coming back the week after the election, but there will be relief bills. And so I was told, it's an opportunity for us to get creative, perhaps, and to try to slide in some of this other stuff we're talking about. But definitely we want to pay attention to those coming through Congress in November, because there'll be 2 bills probably, one for each hurricane.
And you did ask about the state. The governor is very aware of the needs of the Gulf Coast. I mean, all the communities. We're just going to have to wait and see how that plays out. I'm sure there's going to be something, and he already has sent an awful lot of resources between the people picking up the debris, him getting the port going and bringing gasoline in. I mean, he's already delivered a lot of resources, and I suspect there will be more. So, but I just don't know what that'll look like. So, Mayor Saraki, did you have a question? Russ? Councilmember Gertis, did you have any questions? Mayor Gaddis?
I did have a question about this workaround. Would this be a permanent workaround, or is this a one-shot deal?
I'm at this point, I'm just hoping for something, but I don't have an answer for that. And if it's a workaround based on the storm, then it would be a one-shot deal. But Senator Scott has been working really hard on this. Congresswoman Luna has been working really hard on this. Marco Rubio actually sent his staff out to take a look. Now, I was surprised about that one. And Kelly took Senator Rubio's staff out on the beach and then in a helicopter and flew them all around the county so they could see. So we have people working in Washington trying to get the language in WRDA changed. So I think we take this workaround if we get it and then just continue what we're doing is my recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Trish, did you have a question? Doreen?
More of a comment related to the discussion about the commercial cleanup and the debris. And I understand that possibly the recommendations about you can't separate the commercial from the residential, that has just become, so commingled. And I'll say from personal experience, we got an email from the city a week after the storm with the debris in Helene, and it notified us that commercial, and that would be multifamily, so the condo associations all up and down the beach, the restaurants, everything that were impacted, suddenly we were told, well, you have to get your own contractor. You have to pay for it. You have to get the debris removed, which is impossible. I mean, a small restaurant doesn't have the ability to do that. And where are we going to get a contractor when they're contracting with the county and with the municipalities? So it was really a boondoggle and very, very disturbing. So what happened is that all of the debris is commingled, and it like Gulf Boulevard, it's being removed, thank goodness. But that's just how am I trying to say is that for FEMA to have that as one of their requirements, they're not looking at the big picture. And particularly on the barrier island communities, it's different than if you were in an industrial area in the middle of Pinellas County, somewhere unincorporated. It's entirely different than all of the commingling of those types of properties. So I strongly urge that that wording be looked at and, tweaked for future as well.
100%. It's a huge issue. Makes no sense, but that's the way it's set up. Now, they were able to pull it, and I think you'll find them as they pick up in residential areas, as they do these sweeps, they'll be able to, they'll be able to put it all together. But that's the way the rules are set up. And they see it as an insurance issue with a business versus a individual homeowner. It's just the way it's set up. We asked for it to be applied to residential and commercial. That's one of the waivers we requested to make this easier. And So again, we're waiting back on that. But, and, you know, just to the issue of the contractors, you couldn't find a contractor. We had contractors walking away from cities, and they're under contract with the cities. Safety Harbor, Oldsmar, Dunedin, their contractors simply walked away, didn't show up, okay? And so it's a challenge with contractors when you have so many people that are impacted. I thought we had learned our lesson from Irma, and I wasn't here, but I heard about the way in which we designed the debris issues differently from Irma, but it worked a little bit, but certainly not a lot, because we had communities that still are without resources. And so their residents are gonna demand, but who are they gonna hire? I mean, you know, and it's a real problem. We faced, and the commission heard this yesterday, but, you know, and the plight of the EOC that I've been locked in, and we find out that the state increased their contract price that they're paying off. They did a bid, and they increased their contract price significantly. And so then Hillsborough County, you know, proceeded with that, even though we're all under contract before the storm ever hit. Well, we just got contractors out on the road starting. And so I'm like, well, wait a minute, if I don't do that, then they walk off the job, I'm never gonna get them back. And so if residents are screaming now, wait till it's only dependent upon our DOT crews. So we had to modify that. It's unclear what type of reimbursement I'm gonna get because of the way in which these are preset contracts, but we had to make decisions. Those are what the cities and the county are facing daily as we kind of navigate through this process. So I guess Marjorie Love's company, it's a real challenge, and they've all worked very, very hard, every single city, to do everything they can to get resources to be able to move the volume. And you are trying to balance that bit of what you can get reimbursed for, because at the end of the day, somebody's got to pay that bill. And that's put the cities and us and everybody else in a really precarious situation. But I can tell you, every single city is working night and day to remove this material and remove it tomorrow. We do call downs, we have calls. It's 100% all in trying to respond to this disaster. So, and because we see that with emails saying, I didn't see anybody in my neighborhood. It's like, well, they're going to be there. It's just, I can't tell you when, you know? And so they're working, everybody, all the cities, everybody's working really hard to be able to respond to this. Hope that helps.
Mayor Rector.
Yeah, I just, I want to thank the county. The county has been fantastic working with all our municipality, very tough issues, and helping us fight through all those. It's really been awesome to see our county pull together as a whole and support the municipalities. I've probably gotten 4 complaints about debris just while we've been sitting here this morning from residents. You know, the debris that's the most important to them is the debris in front of their house, on their street, and it doesn't matter that we're working the next neighborhood over. It doesn't matter how much we've already got cleared out. It's that debris that they're looking at every morning when they come and go from work. So for us, it's been messaging, trying to just continually message over, here's what we're doing, here's where we're at. And I think I think that's been helpful. I'm still going to get these messages like I got this morning, but we can't over communicate enough as municipalities where we're at, what we're trying to do. I thank the county administrator for mentioning the difficulty of the debris removal, because we had our debris removers pull out Tuesday morning. The governor's on television talking about, we're going to work through the storm arriving or whatever, and these guys just left. So we've had challenges too. I was told yesterday their equipment's breaking down. The hydraulics just are not meant to pick up this water saturated heavy equipment, so they're even having challenges. But I can't just tell you from a municipality standpoint how appreciative we are of the help that the county's been giving us, communicating and working and helping work through all these FEMA rules, which she's explained are very complicated. And I want to thank the governor too, because Yesterday, I'm driving out Drew Street, and there's FDOT trucks picking up debris on Drew Street, which it was really limbs and kind of things, but things our guys were not going to be able to get to for a long period of time. We're going to drive our people crazy, and all the help we can get and all the help we've gotten already. I just can't tell you from the county and the state just how appreciative we are here in Clearwater for all the help you've given us.
Thank you. And I think Barry's been an outstanding leader and has built relationships with every city manager, and he's done a really outstanding job at being inclusive and kind of working as a team as a whole versus, siloing. And so he's been a real great leader when it comes to that. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment. So yeah, while we've been sitting here, I've gotten 2 emails and texts on debris and 2 on flooding. So it's what's important to people is what they see when they walk out their front door. But just a comment on FEMA. Clearly, getting 2 storms in 13 days is something that is unprecedented and historic in the worst way possible. And FEMA is very inflexible, but they need to get a little more flexible to try to streamline some of these processes. But just to underscore the importance of working with them on this reimbursement, the reimbursement to Bay County from Hurricane Ian was over $300 million. So it's real serious money here. So it's, we can't just open up the gates and say, okay, just dump it here and ignore it, because it is real money at the end of the day. So.
Okay, any additional questions? Well, they were kinder than I thought they would be. So there were fewer questions than I thought there would be. So evidently we're communicating well that there were so few questions. So get back to work. Thanks so much.
I will go back to the EOC. By the way, Brian told me 9:30. That's the reason I had to have a cup of coffee. I'll blame that one on him. But thank you all very much.
Thanks, Barry. I said in our meeting yesterday, and since only Brian heard it, I'll repeat it. Our staff that have been in that EOC for more than 20, I don't know how many days now, 25 days, nobody will ever know what they're doing, right? They haven't been able to go home and take care of their own homes. They haven't been able to take care of their families. They couldn't go prepare their homes because they've had to be in the EOC. And the front-facing stuff, they'll never know. You guys will never know what they did behind the scenes. And so I'm going to give you an example. When St. Petersburg shut off their water, they didn't inform us, unfortunately, they didn't inform us they were shutting the water off. So we had 5 hospitals, 22 ALFs, and 7 dialysis centers that had no water and had no warning. And so that team in the EOC got together, so organized, found pumper trucks from around the state to bring water into those hospitals so that the patients would have what they needed. And then they had to organize 11,000 ambulances just in case the water didn't work and we had to move those patients. Now, those are things that you'll never know, that all of a sudden they had to go into action and they had to find trucks all over the state, had to find 11,000 ambulances to come and save those people in those hospitals, ALFs, and make sure those dialysis centers were working. I mean, these are things that you just don't know that they are doing. And that's just one small example of the stress, but the coordination and the leadership that is going on in that EOC that nobody's ever going to know about. They have done, they've been heroes. They have done heroic things that nobody knows about, and there is no way we can thank them enough. And so I just wanted to share that because the stress that they have been under to do what they've been doing, and Brian's been there, he's seen it. He's got a desk in that EOC, and he hasn't been able to leave it. And they are just doing amazing things, and we just cannot applaud them and thank them enough. They're true heroes, and I'm just really proud that they work for us, and their commitment is incredible. So, enough on that stuff. We'll get back to business because we have some reports to show you. Yes.
Just to clarify, The city did call us, but right beforehand when they knew. So I just
Okay.
don't want it to be out there that they didn't contact
Okay,
us.
but
We've
it
been in-
it
we've
wasn't
been
much
very-
notice.
Well, they didn't have much notice. I just
True.
don't want, we've had very good coordination with the city.
Okay.
That one was they didn't know until the last minute, and then they called us and told us, so.
So if I inferred something different, I apologize. But it's just an
I
example.
don't want that call from the mayor.
Right.
Okay.
It's just an, and I apologize. Mayor, I apologize. I do apologize. But I was just using that as an example of how quick these people have to act to do heroic things. And like I said, that's never going to be on the news. It's not something anybody's ever going to know. But they really are heroes. So thanks. So, and again, I apologize. I apologize to the mayor. It was really just an example. So we're going to go to the marketing plan with Steve Grimes. We're going to hear some good stuff.
Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Seems a little trivial to be talking about marketing after all of the things that we've just been hearing about. But as you all know, getting visitors back here and spending time and spending money here is critical. So let's talk a little bit about that. So first and foremost, this is not the update that I had prepared for this meeting 3 weeks ago. Clearly, things are very different. I think it's helpful just to go through a little bit of a timeline of what we've been doing, so you've got a sense of so how we've been approaching this. So first, we had a great media plan all ready to share with you guys today. And that was all put together, and we've got creative and development with our teams, and we were going to show you some fantastic new commercials, and not going to see any of that. Obviously, once the storm started approaching, the first storm, all our marketing was paused. Everything that could be was paused. We had that great Fall Colors campaign that we showed you a few weeks ago. That's been canceled. The campaign development that was going on with our agency, BVK, that was all put on hold until we knew what we were dealing with. Our website pivoted from telling people what a great destination it is to providing real-time information on hotel availability and evacuation updates and things like that. And then our industry update emails started going out regularly. We couldn't keep up with Robin, she's taken off. Robin and her emails were fantastic. We were trying to keep up with Robin and how quickly she was getting out her updates. So we really sort of pivoted everything. Then we got through the other side of Helene. We're like, okay, now we know, now we're going to come back with a plan. Obviously, Helene hit the beaches hardest. So our initial thought is, hey, the message is something along the lines of, the beaches got hit hard, but the rest of the destination's great. Come on back. The beaches will just take a minute. There were a few ads that needed to get out during that time. Those went out. And as Robin mentioned, we developed this concept of still shining. And the idea of pivoting from our campaign message of let shine to still shining. And it's unfortunate she's not still here because we have made this available to partners, and we're going to resend that out again today to make sure that everybody has access to this. Still Shining is not intended to be a Visit St. Pete Clearwater owned message. It is a community message. It's for everybody, and we're looking for all the ways we can to sort of shout that from the rooftops. We're still here, still shining. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We kicked off the concept of Still Shining with a moment at St. Pete Pier, the sun coming back up, and really just sort of showing people, hey, we're still here, the sun is still shining, it looks fantastic. And our strategy initially was we're just going to be positive with everything we do. We're going to look for those stories that are out in the community, and there's an example there of a building with the heart and the lights, and that's sort of the positive tone that we wanted to communicate to people. And then another storm shows up. So then we had to sort of pivot once again. So we had an activation in Denver, the Great American Beer Festival, where we were going with 3 of our brewery partners. We put that on hold. However, a lot of stuff had already been shipped to Denver, and the folks in Denver hosted it for us with volunteers. So that was pretty amazing. We did have to cancel some other advertising. We got some sponsorships in the UK. We did get to travel to IMEX, the trade show, with a smaller staff. and continue to share the message. And we are going to be in New York this weekend at the New York Wine and Food Festival, talking about all of the dining and restaurant options that there are here. And we are still going to be in London next week. Brian will be there, and Jason, to go to Brand USA Travel Week and tell the international audience that we are very much still open for business. And there's a new flight coming from Tampa starting next weekend, coming from Amsterdam to Tampa, sorry. So now what? Obviously, Milton was a different storm to Helene. That notion of the destination's basically fine except for the beaches certainly doesn't apply anymore. I think more pressing from a communications point of view is the national and international press coverage that we have received here has meant that everybody knows that we got hit by a big storm. With Helene, I feel terrible for the people in North Carolina, but they got the bulk of the press coverage. It sort of moved through Florida, and it was all about what happened in Asheville and what happened in North Carolina. We are still very much the center point for this storm. Even today on national radio, as I'm driving in, they're talking to people in St. Pete Beach. We are still the center that people are talking about for the impact of this storm. So that means everybody knows we got hit. So we have to figure out how we are then going to communicate that. We've also got some other realities, which is a bunch of our events have now been canceled. Shine Mural Festival, fortunately, has only been postponed, but we've got, the powerboat races have been canceled. A lot of the pier events have been canceled. Jazz Holiday has been canceled. So it really changes a lot of things. And then the Trop is obviously both a literal challenge and also a visual challenge of exactly what we're facing right now. We're super excited to have had the Savannah Bananas coming here in March. That's still very much up in the air. Obviously, the Rays are still trying to figure out what their world looks like. So post-Milton, very different situation. So what are we doing? Next steps here. So I think, we all know we need to aggressively market this destination and get people back here as soon as the time is right. We're working with our agencies. They're all here. And we're putting together plans. We're working closely with the county communications and the information offices to make sure that we get a cohesive message. We want to avoid any challenges where one community says come back and another community says please don't. We want to try and be as consistent as possible there. The marketing committee that we set up a few months ago, already been speaking to those folks, and we're going to continue to use them as a sounding board as we look to make sure that we are in sync with what our community needs. We're talking to other people that have been through this before. What are the best practices? What have they learned? How did they deal with it? And working with our neighbors, both in Tampa Bay, north and south of us. Do we want to do a Gulf Coast wide message, or do we focus on our individual stories? Because they are all very different. The challenges that we are facing, as bad as they are not probably as bad as Siesta Key and some of the areas south of us who got hit even harder than we did. And I think the key message that we want to sort of internally we've been talking about is we're dealing with damage, not destruction. Now that may be not quite accurate if it's your building or your house that got destroyed, but as a community overall, we did not get wiped off the face of the earth, nothing even close to it. And we've got lots and lots of hotels that are back open and lots of restaurants that are back open, and Brian will give a little bit of an update on some of those numbers. So we have this phased approach. The next week or so, and these dates are vague, we're in a assessment data gathering mode. We've got a whole team of people that are calling every single hotel. They're calling restaurants. They're calling attractions. Are you open? What's your situation? When do you think you'll be open? Are you completely, how many rooms do you have available? All of these sort of things. And we put all of that into a database so we have a real handle on exactly what it is that's going on. We're starting to share through our social channels all the positive news. Who's open? Who's coming back? Clearwater Marine Aquarium opens again on Friday with a special exhibit. We'll be there to shout that that's open again. Columbia Restaurant just reopened on Sand Key. We're telling people that all of these pieces of good news. And we're going to use our website to continue to tell people what's open and where they can go and how they can still have a good time. The next couple of months is all about this notion of still shining. As a community, we are still here and we're still shining. We really like this message, like the positivity, the resilience of it, and obviously it ties into the one thing that, regardless of what condition the beaches are in or anything else, the sun is shining. We can pretty reliably say that the sun will still be shining down here. And it ties nicely into that, and I think reflects the spirit of the community. So you'll see us doing lots of different ways to bring still shining to life. We're going to look to produce some buttons for people to wear. You know, we're all still shining, and I encourage everybody to embrace that message and use it in any way that makes sense. Again, it is not a St. Pete Clearwater Hour message. It is a community message, and use it on your social posts, using it on your advertising, put it on a sign. We want everybody to understand we're still here, still shining. Hopefully, if all goes to plan, by January, hopefully sooner, potentially December, we will go back to those plans that I referenced at the beginning, and we will be more full steam ahead, come back, we're ready for the season, and everything is as normal as it can be. Chair Peters mentioned Visit Florida. We're already speaking to them. We already have a plan in place to have a co-op deal with them where they will help fund some of our advertising. Details of that probably the next time we all get together. So that's where we are right now. I think the other thing I'd like to stress is we'd like to hear from you. You guys are experts. You're all in this business. You've all suffered from various degrees of challenges. What do you want to hear from us, and what do you want us telling the world, and on what sort of timeline? I suspect different people are like, we're ready to go right now. Put an ad out there, and others are like, whoa, give us a minute. So love to hear from you guys. Please ask me any questions you have, but I'd love to also to hear from you guys. What are you looking for? Because we're here to serve you guys.
Anyone have any questions for Steve? Any questions? Mayor, Rector.
A couple things. One, I've done a number of Canadian television interviews. I did one Friday, and then Saturday was with the Toronto station. Both times, the last two I did, the last question they asked me was, Mayor, when will it be safe for Canadians to return to Clearwater? They're wondering. And their image is all the bad pictures.
Yep.
And I told them today, you can come back and we have resort hotels open already. Yeah, it's not going to be what it was, but so I know at least in Canada, or Canadian tourism, that a lot of them wondering. And I told them, at the time, snowbirds typically come back, you're going to have, it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to have similar experience to what you've always had here. We're going to get through this. So I don't think it's too early to at least start some. I don't think you want to do heavy marketing, advertising, but I think a push, at least to our main Canadians in particular, that market's important now.
Yeah.
Let them know, hey, come back now. And
Yeah.
those things they've always enjoyed, particularly in Dunedin, away from the water, probably like they were before. And then the second thing is, through our sports company, our experience with disasters in other markets, and it's been really important to start having conferences, business meetings, and youth sports events as soon as possible, because that has helped us in those markets flip the mindset to get those kids and families back for the tournament and then posting on social media. It really wasn't that bad. We actually, we didn't notice, it wasn't like we thought we would, and doing that quickly. In Gatlinburg, Tennessee, we did it 3 weeks, and we didn't have the turnout for the tournament we thought we would normally have. But all those city, county leaders tell you it was huge in getting the mindset changed. Because, and I like the last thing you've got here on damaged but not destroyed. I think that's an important message for us to get out. So that's the only thing I would add to put up there already is just, I think that visitors are also distrustful of whatever marketing or advertising we do. Oh, yeah, they've photoshopped X, Y, and Z. But boy, if we have people visiting here and they post and it's unfiltered, and I think the sooner we can get that, I've offered to our Clearwater innkeepers and whatever I can do to convince your conference meeting planners to keep that date, to not cancel. I'll do it, and I think if we can all do that together, that's really important.
Yeah, I just, on those points, stressing don't cancel. you know, the best thing people can do to help the community is stick to their plans and come down here and have that meeting and have that trip. And just, you know, anecdotally, there were people in St. Pete yesterday who were here for meetings. So that was encouraging to see that there are actually people who still came down. 100% agree with that. The imagery, I think you're exactly right. We're looking for ways to authentically show that we are, in fact, not as badly hit as CNN or the New York Times might make you think we've been hit. The photo that I showed that was taken on St. Pete Beach, or St. Pete Pier, rather, we actually, you know, timestamped that. Like, this was taken this morning. Like that, you know, making sure that people understand, yeah, you know, this isn't a Photoshop, right? This is a real photo taken now. It still looks pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And on Canada, 100%, our international audience, because they have a longer lead time when they're booking their trips, we are going to probably be more aggressive internationally than we will be in the US. And we will have a specific Canadian plan that's actually going to ramp up earlier in November. We, in the US, because of the election and the holidays, the media landscape is a little different in Canada because they don't have an election to worry about. We can be out there a little more aggressively. So we fully intend to be in Canada in November.
Thank you.
You know, we did a big push on the staycations when we were in the recession. And that's another way even to let the people in the middle of the state know that we're open for business, is even pushing staycations because, you know, I mean, we have to push all of it, but we certainly can do the staycation idea to concept as well.
Yep.
Any other, oh, Mayor Saraki, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Steve, I just want to say one thing. I really appreciate this presentation that you did right now because I love the way you approached it. When you changed your plan, you had this idea of where we were headed. Thank you so much to you and your staff. I think one of the key points here for me is that keeping us updated on what restaurants, what hotels are open. Perfect example, my residents, hey, is Frenchie's having Stone Crab Festival? You know, I don't know, but with you keeping us updated on that, I really appreciate it. And so important that we know what restaurants on Clearwater Beach are open, in Dunedin, wherever. Thank you so much again. That's really all I wanted to say, that you really gave me a great sense because the city of Oldsmar lost the BMX Gator Nationals this weekend because of the storm, and that's a big income for us for our hotels and everything. But just thank you for the great job and keep up the good work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Russ.
I'd like to say, Steve, that you're certainly on the right line on being honest. There's a difference between our past experience and today with social media. But just to let you know, like, to give you an example, Sheraton Sankey, after the first one, we opened back up, and we had a convention on that the next day, 250 rooms, and they decided to come. And the mayor was there and all, and he went through this experience with us. And what happened is there was guilt from the outside going after the group saying, how could you meet? And it took the mayor to help make that change, that attitude to say, yes, we made the right decision. And so it's so important to have our officials making the statements from the different communities because those, I mean, I had 10 different countries that I'm communicating with in Europe, friends that were customers originally, asking me how bad it is and everything else. But it's that person they trust, and if the official from those different communities, whether it's Reddington or St. Pete Beach, that the people relate to that community, not to necessarily to mine, can help communicate back and get pressed for and everything. I personally, after a hurricane, the next day, this is years ago, I went to Europe and did a golf tournament, and just because I knew the whole press market was there. And so the timing of what you're going to for Brand USA is awesome, and I'm not sure who's traveling with you as an official, but it's great to have you going because they'll listen to what you're saying because you got your heart into it and naming the different cities for that experience. So you're right on for the international business. As far as the group, our experience, what I'm seeing is, and it's happened before, the group cancels, but it moves to a different date. So those markets that we have this week that we didn't get, they're coming in 4 months, or they're coming next spring, or they're coming next year. And so we really need to be living with those groups that come normally every year that had to move it or cancel. And I think that's a key that you have to really live with, is the group side, to keep that preserved and try and help us find new thing, maybe with other incentives or whatever it is on it. Because the hotels that are open right now, and we're all not open, that we have the infrastructure that we're able to open and all, but there's no infrastructure to go anywhere or do anything. But that's where the group can be satisfied by staying on property and doing it. So the group is and they're going back and tell other people in their communities exactly. So that group is so important to us right now and living with it. And it's across all sections of the county on it. I think also that another thing, if you can do something for us, is the first responders. We opened up, and we're not the only hotel, Duke Energy and all the contractors and all that they have in this community, the job they've done has been unbelievable, I think. But also, they've taken hotel rooms by contract, they've had to. And it's up and down the whole county. And so we need to say we appreciate those rooms and everything and all. And that decision is made nearby and everything. But that's a big economic number that brought employees back for work. And these are employees that got wiped out and all, and plus other ones. But that's such an important market that's happened. We never had before. Home Depot, they came in, and they're here for like a month, I believe, of contracting rooms and all. So that's another piece that we need to acknowledge, that we thank for. The group business is a piece that will help drive other ones in that European business, and especially with this new Amsterdam flight, we need people to come back. So you're right on for what you're doing, you and everybody else. And thank you, Chair, for all you're doing, too.
Thanks. I was going to cancel, and Brian's like, no, I need you there. So, Doreen, I see your light on.
Thank you. A couple of comments following on what's been said. Mentioned about people inquiring, particularly the Canadians. There's a huge loyal
Doreen, could you pull your mic closer, because it's really hard to hear you.
There's a huge loyal following, and I think that those people looking at it more on an individual basis and the stressing the points about the group, of course, but those people are loyal. They'll be coming back. They just need reassurance, and the messaging is great. So I just wanted to comment on that, but I also wanted to ask if we're thinking about marketing our other amenities, because yes, our beaches are terribly affected. And for those of you who are up and operating or will be in the next couple of weeks, but maybe the staycation, getting people from other parts of the state that just want to have a break, maybe, and I don't know the status of Innisbrook, but just using that as an example, maybe they want to come over and stay and play golf. Maybe they want to go to our arts and culture, which has always been a part of, my goal to stress that as well. So are there ways that we could spread that message about the other great things that we have to offer in Pinellas County, the museums and the arts and all of those kinds of things, because that's in different locations, obviously, throughout the county. And I also wanted to comment, and maybe you would have asked this question, but as far as the vacation rental market, having the ability to co-opt this the messaging, that's going to be huge, which I will be sharing with my staff, and I know they follow your messaging too. But we're going to be a lot slower in terms of the properties that we have. We don't have the advantage of corporate, like some of these huge, larger hotels. I witnessed, and I haven't been there, Clyde running the show at the Bilmar, but immediately you could see they had brought in the huge crews, and we don't have that ability in terms of, I manage 10 resort hotel condo hotels. And each one of them have their own individual issues and problems. And so we're going to be slower to get up and operating, and that is going to have an effect. You know, we in meetings past, we could see how those vacation rentals were bringing in that income on sales tax and tourist tax and so forth. So that's going to be a real challenge for us, and to be able to get that up and running, and just, you know, whatever we can do to work towards that. Thank you.
Thanks, Doreen. And I'm very grateful to the vacation rentals because I'm living in them. So, and so, Phil.
I think you're right on the mark with the staycation market. It's something we were going after this fall anyway. And I think you really hit that pretty hard as soon as the beaches are open and as soon as we can have images that, I apologize, I turned that off. As soon as it's the right time to do so, which could be in a matter of weeks, that we get, you know, when the streets are clean and the beaches are open again, we're making preparations to do some marketing about, you know, Florida resident rates and offering some real deals, not to be profitable, but just keep my staff working. I want to keep the team together, I want to support them, and we need a little bit of activity. Fortunately, none of our boats flooded. They floated, and we're back in business basically. And we have group business we had 270 last night from USF. There was a local group that came, and we'll have more of those. And we're building our schedule around the groups that we have and trying to fill in more. So I'm sure the hotels are probably offering some better deals. And it may look like, oh, come because you get a better rate because it's not what it was. Well, if we can show that it is what it is, and now is a great time to come and experience what we have to offer at a reduced rate, please, you know, support us, that kind of thing. But I think the staycation idea is probably our best bet for the remainder of the year.
Any other questions or comments? No? Great. Great job, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay, next we're going to bring up, we're going to talk about the chamber program with Kylie.
And Madam Chair, as Kylie comes up, I would just note, I think Steve was probably getting ready to say it, but, you know, on the point of marketing and advertising the other things, the golf, the other things to do on the water, the museums, the aquariums, that is going to be key in our messaging between now and January. So Steve and the team are putting that together as we speak.
Hi, my name is Kylie Diaz. I am Community Engagement Vice President at Visit St. Pete Clearwater. I, too, am not myself today after watching our community for the last 2 weeks go through everything, so I'll do my best to answer your questions today. I wanted to thank the Tourist Development Council for taking time away from your personal and business needs. I know a lot of you experienced damage, and it means a lot that you're here today to support the tourism community. These chambers, we have 13 county-supported chambers, are the backbone that bind together our business community. I want to mention that many of these businesses are owned by Pinellas County residents. I am sure that many of you on this council, your businesses are a part of one or more of these chambers. Never has there been a more important time to lift up our chambers so they can get back to supporting our tourism businesses and welcome guests back to their visitor centers. In total, we had 6 visitor centers that were impacted, damaged in a Hurricane Helene storm surge, including one John Pass Visitor Center owned by the Tampa Bay Beaches. It's a kiosk, which was a total loss. I also want to thank our chambers for the constant communication and support of your member businesses during this time. Of particular note, Robert Miller of the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber, who the day after the storm was literally going door to door, knocking on doors, helping her businesses get back. She was updating the CVB daily with all of her updates, which was, I think Steve mentioned, Robin was almost ahead of us on some of the updates, so we thank her so much for all of her daily updates to us. Amanda Payne of Amplify Clearwater, who along with Robin Miller, helped us identify available resources for our first responders in the days following the storm. Jean Hungaville of Tarpon Springs Chamber, whose area was impacted. Her area was impacted only in one area. So her, along Tarpon Boulevard there, it was not impacted at all, but along Dokaganese Boulevard, it was impacted. And she was actually the first person to give me an update on Tarpon Springs. I hadn't heard anything on the news. She was the first person to give us an update. So thank you to everyone for your constant communication. So in regards to the chamber funding program that we're about to discuss, we're going to give you a 2024 update and 2025 programming. I would like to thank Brian Loack, Amanda Coffey, Terry Tuxhorn, Oliver Kugler, and Crossroads Consulting for their assistance in making the following updates possible. We spent the year of 2024 with the chambers to gain insight into how we would refresh and update the chamber funding program. It was in serious need of updates. We were measuring things like mail and phone calls to the chambers. So the world has changed, and it was time to update the chamber program. We brought the chamber CEOs back to roundtable discussions with Visit St. Pete Clearwater to get their insight. We held a chamber workshop at St. Pete Collaborative Labs with the CEOs to further gain insight into the chamber funding program. We hosted educational sessions to assist chamber partners so they could get set up on Google Analytics and get better measurements. It was led by a marketing firm that was familiar with chamber web tools. We did that on an individual basis, and we also had a larger one scheduled, but that was actually during the storm, so we didn't get to host that second one. We explored new data measurement technology to implement into the chambers. We attended the Visitor Services Center Summit this year, and at that summit, a lot of chambers are using technology now for measurement and things like that. So we're talking to a company right now so we can help get some new data and technology implemented into our chambers and step into the future. We used a non-biased, I want to stress that, a non-biased third-party chamber, Crossroads Consulting, to help us develop a clear chamber funding program for visibility. We developed an impacted chamber agreement. Just in the last couple of weeks we did this. After the first storm, we worked on that impacted chamber agreement with the purpose of supporting our welcome centers to get back online for our visitors. Okay, so here's the approach on our chamber funding. So this was a collaborative approach between Visit St. Pete Clearwater and Crossroads Consulting. We defined metrics based on peer research, industry experience, and input from the chambers. We gathered and organized data from the chambers. We designated weighting for metrics to promote a balanced, fair, and equitable allocation. We assigned scores for each chamber against those metrics, and we established funding allocations dependent on rank. So every chamber was ranked from 1 to 13. We also compared this to historical allocations. We wanted to make sure that chambers didn't take huge hits in what was allocated to what they had been given previously. The weighting was established to reflect strategic priorities while also seeking to maintain balance and fairness with no single measurement resulting in a disproportionate amount of funding. This is important because if some of your metrics change, say you gain 5 businesses, you lose 5 businesses, your funding is not going to change a whole lot. You're in that ranking system, so that's why that made sense. Some of the metrics that we decided upon, and again, when we brought everybody together at this chamber CEO retreat at St. Pete Collaborative Labs, they all gave us their input on what they wanted to be measured on, and we had a huge list. So that list was narrowed down, and these are the metrics that we decided upon for the formula. We measured the amount of visitor center and visitor centers traffic. We also, which is not listed here, is how many employees those visitor centers staffed. Membership totals from accommodation. We weighted tourism and non-tourism categories differently. Events that were tourism related and number of attendees to those events. Tourism, collateral, and visitors guides distributed. And most importantly, marketing effectiveness, social, web, and email reach. And also tourism advocacy efforts for those chambers that are out there advocating for tourism. For the allocation, we took the total weighted points for all the metrics and summed to rank each chamber 1 through 13. Tourist development tax, while not utilized as a metric for the chamber scoring due to reporting constraints, it was analyzed and it helped serve as a justification for those tiered allocations. Funding amounts were determined as a percentage of overall allocation funding, and the final amounts were broken down into marketing and staffing in a 65-35 split. So 65 of that goes to marketing and 35% goes to staff funding. So the key takeaways that we came away with this year in 2024, we did a lot of work together, and we're so proud of that. We developed a chamber funding program that can be replicated in other destinations. We have had other destinations already call us and ask us how we do this, and so now we have something on paper that other destinations can take and replicate into their own, and it's something that our county can take pride in. Visit St. Pete Clearwater staff, we worked alongside our chambers throughout the year to make sure their needs were met and to maintain unity between the CVB and the 13 county-supported chambers. After 2 storms hit our destination, the impacted chamber agreement was created to ensure our affected chambers will be able to welcome visitors and support tourism businesses. And again, we explored new data and technology for future efforts. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What's the, just curious what the total annual budget is for this program?
The total annual budget is $600,000. Last year, the Tourist Development Council actually gave us an additional $100,000, so it was 5 and now it's 6.
Okay, got it.
So that was another reason why we wanted to redo the formula now, because we wanted to make sure that we allocated that money properly.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to dovetail, I should have probably done this at the front of this presentation, but just as we're doing across the organization, we have a variety of funding programs, grant programs. We're reevaluating all of those. So we talked earlier about Film Commission. We've talked about different incentives we have. Our chamber funding program is one of those that we reviewed, and Kylie and her team did a tremendous job last year in collaboration with the chambers. When we came in, there wasn't really any rhyme or reason to how this chamber funding was allocated to the different chambers. And we asked folks, well, where did this come from? And how come they get this and they get that? Nobody really had the answer for that. So Kylie did a tremendous job at really bringing the chambers together, talking about what their priorities are, how they believe they're positioned to support our mission, and then also make sure that those dollars are being spent in a way that is effective and within state statute and our TDT plan. So again, we just talked about that allocation. Thank you to the Board of County Commissioners last year for allocating an additional $100,000 to that pot. And I think right now, more than ever, this funding is really going to go a long way in getting our businesses back up and running.
Any other questions or comments? No? Great. Oh, Trish, did you have a question?
I just wanted to know, we all know that the chambers rely on their memberships for their income, and during this time of need, what funding opportunities might we be able to provide them to keep their employees? I just keep getting calls that the chambers are having to lay off and lay off and lay off their employees, so I just wanted to ask that.
So one of the things that we did in the last couple of weeks for that impacted chamber agreement was we took off the requirement for the one-to-one reimbursement for the staffing, so they can use that staffing funds fully towards their staff at this time.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Doreen, I'm sorry.
Full of comments this morning. Just wanted to say thank you. And Russ, I'm looking at you too over the many years of being on the TDC and working with the chambers. I was one of the longest serving board members for the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber for many, many years. And just the idea that, yes, with technology and all the things that we have at hand, makes that reporting and gathering of information. But this is something I'm really, really pleased to see that VSPC has stepped forward. All those years, it was almost like we were having to prove ourselves and reprove ourselves, and there was a lot of not connecting and working together. And so having that funding, having this data, doing all of this reporting and working with the chambers, this is just a huge success story. So thank you for everyone coming forward.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Anybody else? No?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kylie. And Eddie Kirsch on Destination Metrics.
Good morning, and glad to see you all here again. As you know, our typical destination metrics typically report about a month and a half behind. So while I have some data from August and from the summer, and perhaps some information that helps us maybe indicate where we might go, really the good news, and I think the positive story, is that we have a very resilient and strong tourism industry that we've seen perform really well despite challenges in the past, and something that I think we should be really hopeful about moving forward into the future. So, and obviously in future reports, we're going to try to do everything that we can to provide you guys with as much information as available, and I welcome any feedback, any comments or notes or suggestions from this group that we'll take in and look into further. But to sort of recap August, you know, before this series of storms came through, and really recapping the summer as a whole, we had a strong month in August, almost 5% up in terms of TDT collections. We had a traditional lodging demand that was also up by over 2.5%. We had a decrease in vacation occupancy. However, that was offset really by the number of listings and supply growth in that industry. So really the demand, even in that industry, despite a lower occupancy, was strong. You know, just by the numbers, we had about 61% hotel occupancy for August. It is one of our slower months, but that was up over 1.5% from last year. Our vacation rental industry was down, as I noted, from last year by about 10%, but as I'll note a little bit later, we do see an increase in supply that's greater than the decrease in occupancy. Our hotel rate was about where it was last year, and similarly, our vacation rental rate wasn't too far off from last year as well. So the rates were still holding despite a little bit lower occupancy. To really recap the summer, this was our second highest summer ever. 2022 was exceptional because of a revenge travel and getting back to travel after having so much pent-up demand. But 2024 was better than 2023 in terms of total TDT collections, and it really was a significantly good summer for us. As I noted earlier, when we look at the total number of listings on Airbnb and VRBO, we do see an increase of about 12% more than we had over this time. So despite that decrease in occupancy, that really indicates that we still had strong demand in that industry this summer. And likewise, you know, our hotel industry was right where it was last summer in 2023. I've been showing these slides to you just about every month, and this is really where I get the takeaway of our resilient industry. Typically, when we've seen decreases in our Gulf neighbors, we haven't always seen those decreases in our own area. So for the month of August, as you know, we still were up in revenue per available room, in occupancy, and basically flat on rate. We didn't see those same numbers really transpire in other communities near us. When we look at the rest of the state, we've continually seen a little bit of a bounce in places like Miami and Orlando, and I would say generally that our industry tends to mirror those strengths in the two largest markets in Florida. Year-to-date collections, we were right where we were last year in the penultimate month of fiscal year 2024. With the data that we had available, we feel hopeful that September will come in pretty strong as well, and that we will actually ideally go beyond what we had last year, which was a record-breaking year in TDT. So we don't know that for a fact until we see September's numbers, but other data indicates that we did have a strong September as well prior to Hurricane Helene and Milton coming in. And to just kind of recap, what last year looked like, since I know that we've been paying close attention to it, we had a little bit of a softened demand to start out the year. Then we made up for it with a pretty strong season in February through April. It was slightly shorted due to an early Easter, but once again, we had a strong summer that we saw and very comparable to last year. And again, jumping back into August, you can see that TDT collections was really across multiple areas, that vacation rentals bounced back after a little bit of a decreased July and showed strength, as well as places like Clearwater and St. Petersburg were up a little bit from last year in 2023. We don't have too much information looking forward, but what I was able to gather kind of demonstrates the story that you all have already talked about. In the interim, our hotel rooms have been filled with displaced residents and emergency responders and crews coming in and really giving us a little bit more of an increase in the short term in our traditional hotel lodging segment. And we hope that demand will, kind of continue to balance out and stay strong as we recover. You will see, there's a lot of factors there. From the vacation rental side, as pointed out earlier, this could have a much longer pathway to recovery. There's a number of units that are not going to be available as quickly as some of the hotel units. So we will be monitoring the recovery of both these industries as we come out from these events. That's all the information I had, but again, like everyone else, I welcome your guys' feedback and direction.
Any questions? Wow, evidently you did a really great job because nobody's got any comments or questions, so thank you so much. Brian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the next item, I'm going to go over some proposed changes to the tourist development plan. And this is not the first time I'm introducing these changes that are in front of you. For those of you that were at the joint BCC-TDC meeting back in, it seems like forever ago, I guess March, May, probably May. These were discussed, and there was consensus between the Board of County Commissioners as well as TDC that these were changes in the right direction. So I'll just give you a quick overview of these three, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. But the first, essentially, there's three proposed changes to the plan. And I will start by saying, as a reminder, the plan, in order to amend the tourist development plan, it requires a vote of essentially a majority plus one of the Board of County Commissioners. So that's a little bit different than the typical votes, but I just want to make sure to put that out there. The first change that we're proposing is what we're calling a cleanup amendment. And this simply, when you go in the allowable uses of the plan, there are still, they still call out Tropicana Field, TD Bank Spring Training Facility, as well as Baycare Park and the Dali, that we can use TDT to pay off bonds on these facilities that we've already paid those off on. So we're simply suggesting that we remove those out of there. They're no longer needed. Additionally, it removes the term recreational facilities, which was not an allowable expense. I will note, we do have some ballpark, stadiums, whatnot, youth sports complexes, tournament, amateur sports complexes. Those are not impacted by this. Those are still allowable expenditures under Category D. The next one we've talked about many times is it increases the allowable allocation from $2 million up to $3 million for our elite events. And then the third one is it adds public facilities into the allowable uses. And public facilities are simply, these are statutorily authorized, had not been in our tourist development, our local plan yet, but it's simply publicly owned facilities, publicly owned and operated public facilities as defined by State Statute 125 that are directly associated with or demonstrated to be tourist attractions. And so we work very closely with Amanda and her team in the county attorney's office to narrowly scope those. And there are some public facilities, potential public facilities throughout the destination that we think are certainly worthy of tourist development funding that without this change would not be able to be considered for TDT dollars. So we wanted to put that in here today. Those are the three changes. They're pretty straightforward, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and if I can't, I know that Amanda will be able to.
Phil?
I got home last night after a hockey game and said, right, now I've got time to prep for this meeting. And I spent about 15 minutes reading the wrong statutes. But I finally got to the right ones. I've been involved in rewriting the plan or assisting to rewrite the plan in the past. All I wanted to do is say, job well done. It's perfect. It addresses everything we needed to. It cleans a whole lot up. And I'll be the first one to propose a motion to move it forward if I need to. Thank you.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Mayor Gaddis?
Yes, a motion's on the table.
Oh,
so,
okay. I didn't know if you had a question.
I actually had comments about this. Back at the joint meeting, Barry Burton recommended a 50-50 split to better fund our capital projects, which includes beach nourishment. For more than 6 years, we've been arguing with the Army Corps. We also know that we'll never get perpetual easements. While we watched, waited, and hoped for a resolution, our biggest fear happened. Now, after the fact, the federal government may offer us a reactionary solution. Yes, we will take it, but we are Pinellas County. We should always take a proactive approach with our most precious resource. Until we have a permanent solution with the Corps, Barry Burton recommended a 50-50 split at the joint meeting. I, too, believe that we should do that, but also I think we should take it a step further. With the extra revenue that's collected from going to a 50-50 split for capital projects, I believe all of the extra should be geared towards beach nourishment. We're better than this. We got lucky. It doesn't feel like luck, but until we actually have a permanent solution with the Army Corps, I think it's all of our responsibilities that we should step up and protect our greatest resource. What I see in section 118-32 is no mention, no change whatsoever on that split. And I'm very disappointed to see that. I can't move forward with the changes that are recommended as they're written. Thank you very much.
Phil?
I can appreciate the mayor's position. It's also, and that's one of the reasons why I thought this was perfect, because they didn't go to the 50-50. I think we need to continue with the 60-40. It's very important to me and very important to many who agreed to go to 60-40, which was more than we were doing in the past. The main reason we are here is to support tourism and market the area. And part of that means keeping our beaches. Part of that means doing some capital improvements. But we have the ability that was demonstrated or conveyed to us to move money if we absolutely need to in a true emergency. We do have some reserves that could be allocated either way by a vote of the BCC. To move to a 50-50 now in perpetuity, to put more money into capital and less money into marketing, I don't think is a prudent move. I think that we should reserve the right to move funds as we need to in situations where it's required. I was also a proponent of increasing more than a 0.5% allocated toward beach nourishment to make sure we had the funding. But again, Barry Burton and his staff has conveyed to me that they had the ability to fund it, and they will always make that a priority. And we're not going to get into a commitment that handcuffs us and keeps us from doing that in the past. So I would reiterate that my motion and to move it forward as stated. Thank you.
Commissioner Scott?
The White House hasn't given us any timeline, have they, on when they may get back to us?
No, they said once we got moving on, past this storm process, excuse me, that they would get with us. And so I think we'll probably wait a week and then follow up and see where we're going with that. Russ?
I agree 100% with Phil on this, that the commission has always been fair to us and reviewing and looking at our input. On the second page, Brian, if I may ask, those are all other considerations that are not into this review at this time, right? Some additional context to consider, but it doesn't include any of those.
So the first paragraph in numbers 1 through 7, those are conditions that must be met for public facilities to be eligible expenses under state statute, and that just shows what those provisions are. At the end where it says, assuming the proposed changes are adopted, the following categories of statutorily allowable expenditures remain unauthorized under the local plan, those are not considered in this, in these recommendations. I will say these are things that we identified earlier this year, these proposed changes. We have talked to you all and the Board of County Commissioners about these, and there was consensus on that, and that's why we're bringing these forward. I do think that there will certainly be myself, as well as in coordination with our partners, our chambers, our industry, the TDC, and the Board of County Commissioners, we will still continue to, this isn't a one-shot deal. We're going to still continue to look at the plan. And so nothing's off the table. These are simply provisions and recommendations that we know there's consensus on, and we wanted to bring those forward now.
Okay. So these are included or not included as it reads?
Sorry for talking too much and not answering the actual question. The bottom line, those are not included in the recommendation.
Okay. So in this, it says that we can support sanitary sewers, waste, but it has to be towards a tourist facility that you're considering, right?
Amanda can help clarify this. Essentially, no, those are other things that fall under the the statutorily authorized public facilities. However, we're not recommending those be included in this. We specifically crafted language that would narrowly tailor these towards tourist attractions, and Amanda can speak to that.
Yeah, Brian pretty much nailed it, but yes, we have, because we added the language that whatever public facilities we fund have to be directly associated with or demonstrated to be tourist attractions. So it's very unlikely that there would be sanitary sewer, solid waste, drainage that would meet that criteria. Now, if there was, it could potentially be funded. It would still have to go through the funding process and be approved. And the criteria listed on the second page of the memo, that's statutory. We didn't add that into the plan, but that's automatically going to apply to any public facility that gets approved.
And what I'm thinking is that this is being conservative in the interest of tourism.
Absolutely.
Is what this is being stated, that we need to make sure is in there, and you've addressed it that way. State statute has come along over the years, adding other things in certain counties and so forth, and our conservative government has here protected tourism industry. I personally think we're at a critical point right now. The infrastructure's damaged. We need to protect it, but we need to invest in it where it needs to be appropriately invested, as you're doing with this. So I agree with this, what you're doing here, and to leave it at 60-40 with going forward to review it when we need to review it is just right. Thank you.
Any other? Oh, Clyde. Go ahead, Clyde.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to agree with Phil. He did bring up well over a year ago that we should change, even if temporarily, the amount of money going towards beach nourishment. Moving to a 50-50 does not ensure that that additional 10% would go towards beach nourishment or anything. If you go to any bricks and mortar that are out there that gets voted on. My other concern that we voiced at the joint meeting was if there's an emergency, that 60% is already going to be depleted, and we're going to need it now more than ever. I guarantee we're going to see a lot less tax dollars come in over the next several months, maybe even more for my property, because we are limping along right now. So we need money for marketing more than ever and not to move it to other sources.
Okay. Dave, did you have another question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, what is the, I'm going to ask you about some numbers real quick. What's the percentage of revenue for advertising that is currently being spent? So you've got so much money that's coming in every year, and you're spending so much every year. It's my understanding that we don't have a way to spend the amount of money that we're actually collecting currently. Is that right?
I wouldn't, I'll answer the first question. The first question, as a percentage of TDT collection, what is being spent on advertising and marketing? Currently, this year, last year's budget, the Board of County Commissioners did increase by an amount of $6 million to the $42 million budget, bringing that total up to about $49 million in marketing and advertising dollars and to fund the CVB. This year, in fiscal year 2025, they also included an additional $6 million to bring that total up to about $50 million. So it's approximately 50% right now being spent on marketing and advertising. I think that now moving forward, we're in the past, we may not have spent, certainly weren't allocated that 60% in times. And quite frankly, this year, we won't spend 100% of that due to some different circumstances. I wouldn't say that we can't spend it because I know Steve and his team, you know, we think that we do spend a lot of marketing and we do have a lot of resources, but we don't penetrate a market to the extent that we certainly could. And we could never have enough money to do that. So we could spend it. Right now, we're not spending more than 50%.
Okay, and my next question is what is the current reserve that we have?
Yeah, and Jim's back there, and he will give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, but round numbers, about 118 million-ish on each side.
So at what point, if we did a 50-50 split, would we start cutting into that reserve for marketing? Would that ever happen?
It's difficult to say. It depends on what our budget, what our allocation would be in any given year.
Thank you.
Was that pretty close, Jim?
Good morning, Jim Abernathy, Office of Management and Budget. The FY25 budget has about $136 million of operating reserves. That's 138% of total revenue for TDT, and about 127 million of capital reserves.
Thank you, Jim. I'm still living in fiscal year 2024. Sorry.
Okay, any other, Doreen?
Yes, just quickly, again, from a historical point of view, Phil, all your years of contributions and working hard to manage the monetary split, what it means in the big picture, and Russ, you as well, all of those things, I very much, in my years of service on this commission too, on track with Phil and the approach that you've taken about keeping things the way they are right now. I think that we do continue, as Brian has pointed out, we do continue looking at this, and this is something that we will be working towards in the future, but I think we don't want to be dealing with making changes right now to any sort of split. So thank you for your input.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, that's a massive amount of operating reserves. It really is. I mean, the thought that we would ever probably blow through that is pretty slim in my estimation. But with that said, we should hopefully know soon enough what's happened, whether the Army Corps and the federal government is back in or not. Once we know the answer to that question, I think it's probably worth revisiting it. But if they're back in for the long term, you know, then we probably don't need to go to a 50-50 because you know, between the state and the federal government, we'll be able to easily manage beach nourishment, in my opinion. But at that point, we really need to just totally double down on marketing, would be my input on that thought. So I would say we just kind of go on as is for right now until we get some more clarity from the federal government.
Yeah, I think we have plenty of money in reserves, and we know we've figured out that even if we have to be paying for it, we've got a plan long-term, and we can always come back and change it. I mean, changing is easy. And what we could do, if we do one day decide to change it, we could always put a sunset on there too, so you have to revisit it. So if there was an emergency and we had to go 50/50, we could do 50/50 for so many years as a sunset and then revisit it to change it back. So there's a lot of things we can do in the future if we need to. I don't know that we need to do it yet. I think we need more information, but we're never going to compromise our beaches, never. It's just not going to happen. It's too important to the county, too important to our industry. It's our #1 economic driver. We're never going to compromise our beaches. We just need to move. And all we're waiting for now is the permit. I mean, we've done the design work, we've done everything, just like we promised we would. So we're pretty much ready to go. So whether the Corps is going to step up with a workaround or not, I'm pretty sure we're just ready to go. Russ?
I think the question we ought to be asking in the next couple of months is to ask for finance to be budgeting where we think we're going to be from other studies south of us, like Fort Myers in that area, what happened to them over the last 2 years in tax collections. And I think we're going to have an impact on that, and we're going to have to be addressing what we think that will be, possibly adjusting your budget. So I think we need to be looking forward also.
We will continue, we already are, and we will continue to. I would caution, though, against specifically Fort Myers. I have talked to them. That was a different storm, and the impacts that they had, they lost a substantial amount of their inventory, and we won't deal with some of those, but we are in close communication with them, as well as Naples and some of our other colleagues who have gone through similar instances.
Okay. Any other, Mayor Rector?
Yeah, I just want to explain my vote here. I'm supporting the motion, but Mayor Gaddis, I completely agree. In prior meeting when we discussed it, my concern was at the time we had $100 million a year in bed tax revenues, and how much, is too much to spend on marketing when we have so many other needs. But I think going forward, clearly in the next year we're not going to have $100 million in bed tax. So I think right now we should keep it the way it is, and I support this motion. But I just wanted to share with the Mayor that I agree with you on the need to focus on those things that we're talking about.
Okay. Any more discussion, question? Chuck?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a Herculean effort right now. Homeowners, business owners, restaurants, hotels, trying to get over the effects of this storm. When we get it cleaned up, it will be a Herculean effort on Steve and the team in marketing to get folks to understand that we are cleaned up and ready for you to come back and visit us in the image that you remember. So that's an example of how, whether it's an oil spill, whether it's red tide, whether it's back-to-back storms, there's times when we will spend and the need to spend a significant amount more in advertising and may need to dip into that reserve. If we go back in history, why are we all here? This was formed, and I'll let Russ and Phil talk on this if need be, but we were formed as a marketing organization. Let's self-impose a tax, a bed tax, and let's take those monies and spend it on our marketing and bring more tourists to this town, this county. We did that. There was a very, very contentious fight, 7 years ago, where we went to the 60-40, and the compromise was, this will never happen again. It will never be discussed again. This is as far as it goes, and yet here we are now going from 60-60 to 50-50 discussion. It has been shown by this commission that we can take monies when need be and move them to sand renourishment or whatever we need to spend it on, which, as the chair so eloquently put, we can never forget why we're here, and that's our beaches. But we're a marketing organization at our core. We're supposed to be reinvesting these dollars to bring more tourists to this market. So I can only strongly hope that you will not touch this 60-40 split to a 50-50. And that's my position. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have one opposition. Okay. Is there any other comments? Anything anyone wants to share? I had something. Brian, I should have asked you in advance before I say it out loud, but that special project I'm so excited about, did you want to mention anything about that?
Not today.
Okay.
I would like to substitute for some other comments, if you would give me the pleasure. Just a couple things to wrap up with, and so many of you have already mentioned it in the response the past couple weeks. I do want to take this opportunity to really thank our partners, our chambers. Robin and I have been in contact probably way too much recently for stepping up in response. Our hotels. We had, our team in the EOC, we were getting requests all of a sudden. We leading up to the first storm, we had to connect with all of our accommodation partners to make sure they had plans to evacuate their guests. And then after that, we're calling them right after the storm, asking them, hey, are you ready to house first responders that we have coming in from all over the state? So they really did that, and I want to thank them for that. In many cases, it was me calling, Melissa at Holiday Inn Harborside at 10:30 at night because we have a team of firefighters that are manning a water tanker truck that can only be in a certain part of the beach communities that's without water, and they have to be there when Duke Energy and the fire strike team are reconnecting power, because if they're not there in a matter of minutes when they do that, there's no water to put out the fires. And Melissa and them, they opened up, they answered my phone call, first of all, that late at night, and they opened up for those folks to make sure they had a place to rest after they were out there fighting fires all day. Julie over at the Winter the Dolphin Beach Club, when we had a shelter volunteer who had been working in a shelter and experiencing some things that a lot of us didn't have to experience for weeks. And finally, when things had stabilized, and for the first time in weeks he had an opportunity to go home, he found out that he didn't have a home. The roof had caved in and collapsed. And his attitude was, that's okay, I'll go back to the shelter. That's where I need to be anyways to help these folks. And Julie says, I don't know if we have space, send him over. We'll make sure that he's got a bed and a place to sleep tonight. So those stories, I could go on and on forever about it. I really want to thank them, our partners, for that, because we couldn't have done it without them. And then our team, probably many of our team at Visit St. Pete Clearwater didn't know that they'd be doing what they'd be doing the last couple weeks when they signed up for the job. And because we have so many folks that are new to our organization, many of them, it's the first time working for a government entity. And, them stepping up and taking care of their families, in many cases evacuating their families, and then making sure their home's secured, and then going to a shelter for days. And the folks in the CIC answering calls when residents don't know where to go for help. The folks in logistics, making sure we're getting food out to our responders. The folks, Mariah, I think she's paying rent now in the EOC. She's out there on a street team handing out flyers with resources in the communities because people, didn't have internet or power at the time. And then the folks who have spent the overnight shifts and still are doing it over at the EOC. I just really want to thank my team for stepping up and doing something that they may or may not have ever known that they would be called to do. And I'm forever grateful to them for that. And then I also want to make sure, Steve mentioned it earlier, but as we come out of this, we put out, we're in a data collection state right now. And so we put out on Friday a survey to our first-star hoteliers and then our industry partners. And it essentially wanted to get a pulse of the destination. Are you open? If not, when will you be? And I just wanted to give you some results. These are initial results. We'll be continuing to do this outreach. Our data collector team, I failed to mention them, and they've been on the horn for a couple weeks making calls. They're doing that right now. But on our initial pass, we had 159 unique responses, 118 of which were accommodations. The rest were attractions, restaurants, and whatnot. Of those accommodations, 64% of them were fully open. 13% of those were partially open, and only 23% are closed at the moment. Of the closed properties, many of those expect to get up and open in the next 2 weeks. Some additional properties expect to be open in November, and then there are some that are December, January, and in some cases will take a little bit more time to repair. Damage side of things with our hotels, 62% of them had no or minor damage, 16% had major or structural, and 88% as of last night had power back on. So this is a sample size. Again, our destination's large. This was of 160 respondents, but I found it extremely encouraging to know that the destination is rebounding. And we take it, Visit St. Pete Clearwater, our entire staff, we know that we have a responsibility to tell the story of the destination moving forward. We're not gonna let TikTok videos from 2 weeks ago or the national news tell the story of this destination. We're gonna lead that, and with your support and our community support, our partner support, we're gonna do that. So I just wanna make sure that the destination knows, the hoteliers, the partners, the business owners, and the employees that are wondering when they're gonna get a paycheck. I want them to know Visit St. Pete Clearwater's got their back. And we're ready to go into action, and it starts now. So I just want to thank everyone and assure them that nobody's forgotten about them, and we're going to be leading that charge to bring back our visitors to the destination. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We've got some great employees and great leadership here. I'm really proud of everybody. And I'm sure it's the same in your city. Amazing things have happened in the last 2 weeks in face of this, and they just are, getting the water back on, getting the sewers working, getting the power back on. I mean, it's just been something. And Public Works did follow along with the electric company to cut down trees. I'm sure they did in the city as well, so that they could cut down the trees and get the debris out of the way so they can get busy getting the power on. It's been an incredible collaborative effort. And so we're just going to get everybody back. We're going to, it is different than Fort Myers. Fort Myers, those buildings were taken off their foundations. We just got water. We got water, and so we're going to be fine. We're going to dry out and really be successful quickly, I believe. So with that, if there's nothing else to add, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.